Have you ever felt like life becomes a kind of constant tug of war? You fight against what hurts, against what changes, and against what doesn't turn out the way you imagined. And in the end, you're left exhausted, as if you were living at war with the inevitable. The more we argue with life, the more it hurts. It's like trying to convince the rain to stop falling or asking time to stand still. That struggle only leads to frustration and added suffering. That's why, in this video, we'll walk through 4 teachings from the Buddha that help you let go of that constant argument with life, approaching problems in a different way, moving from resistance to clear-eyed acceptance. Each teaching will include everyday examples and very simple practices so you can start applying them right away. Stick around until the end, because that's where I'll offer a short, doable challenge. A simple plan to apply these lessons for 1 week without overwhelming you. A guide to help you avoid falling back into the trap of arguing with life. If you can, keep a notebook handy to take notes, since writing helps you better retain what you've learned. And if not, you can always save this video to listen to it again whenever you need to. And remember, if these teachings inspire you, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so we can keep moving forward together toward a calmer, lighter life. Let's get to it. 1. The inevitable in life. Sometimes we catch ourselves reacting with anger or sadness to things that, deep down, are natural. We don't like getting older, getting sick, losing someone, or simply when things don't go the way we want. It's as if we expect life to conform to our plans, when in reality, it follows its own rules. The Buddha encouraged frequent contemplation of 5 truths we cannot avoid. They're not a punishment. They're reminders that bring us back to reality. Denying them only deepens the struggle with life. Accepting them opens the door to a deeper serenity. The first truth is that we're all going to age. We can take care of ourselves and slow the process a bit, but we can't stop it. Fighting this fact only creates more frustration, while accepting it helps us appreciate each stage as a natural part of the journey. The second point is that we're all vulnerable to getting sick. That can make us uncomfortable because we associate health with strength and control. However, illness is part of the human condition. Recognizing this makes us more humble and more compassionate, both toward ourselves and toward others. The third truth is that we're all going to die. This reminder may seem harsh, but it's also liberating. When you remember that life has a definite end, you stop wasting so much time on arguments or trivial worries. The end of life isn't something far off. It's what gives meaning and urgency to the present. The fourth truth is that everything we love and long for sooner or later changes or is lost. Loved ones, projects, achievements, even the things we take the greatest care of. It's not about being cold, but about living with gratitude while we have them, knowing that nothing lasts forever. The fifth truth is that each of us is responsible for our actions and inherits their consequences. We can blame circumstances or other people, but in the end, what matters most is how we act here and now. This reminder isn't a condemnation, it's an opportunity. What we do today plants the seeds of tomorrow. Accepting these 5 truths doesn't mean living with pessimism. Quite the opposite. It means keeping your feet on the ground without fighting what can't be changed. When we do, paradoxically, we gain more freedom to choose how to respond and a greater ability to enjoy what life gives us. I invite you to try a very simple act. Get on the line and choose one of these 5 truths, the one that resonates most with you right now. Close your eyes for a moment and repeat it silently 3 times, breathing calmly. I am subject to aging. I am not exempt from old age. Or, I am the owner of my actions, heir to my actions. As you do, notice whether your body tenses or relaxes. And don't try to force anything. Just let the phrase do its work little by little, like a seed planted in the mind. Then open your eyes and go back to what you were doing, carrying that perspective with you. By repeating these reflections often, they stop sounding like far-off phrases and become an inner guide. They remind us that life isn't here to cater to our whims, but to be lived as it is. And the sooner we stop arguing with that reality, the sooner we can move through life with more calm, acceptance, and ease. 2, don't cling to what we're not. One of the deepest sources of suffering is the habit of identifying with what we feel or think. We say, I'm a failure, I'm anxious, this is just how I am, and I can't change. Those statements seem to describe us, but in reality, they lock us in an invisible prison. The Buddha taught a way to let go of that identification. He explained that what we call the self is made up of elements: earth, water, fire, air, space, and consciousness. In other words, our body and mind are ever-changing processes, not a possession or a fixed identity. When we look at the body from this perspective, we see that what we call my body is actually earth in the form of bones, water in the form of blood, fire in the form of heat, air in the form of breath, and space that allows all of this to happen. None of it is permanent or under our control. The same is true of the mind. The awareness perceiving these words right now is a stream of moments, not something solid we can grasp. Thoughts and emotions come and go like clouds in the sky. That's why the Buddha invited us to repeat wisely. This is not mine. This is not me. This does not define me. Think of a simple example. One day your knee hurts and your mind says, I'm weak or I'm worthless now. In reality, it's just the body expressing pain. The problem arises when we turn that fact into an identity. We tell ourselves a story about who we are that doesn't match reality. Another example, a critical thought comes to mind, like, I never do anything right. If you take it at face value, you sink into self-criticism. But if you see it for what it is, a passing mental event, you notice it and let it go. There's no need to argue with it or fight to make it go away. Just acknowledge there's a critical thought right now. The teaching here isn't to deny what we feel, but to put it in its proper place. Pain is real. Emotions are real. Thoughts are real. What isn't real is that solid self that controls them or is defined by them. The more we cling to the idea of a permanent self, the more we suffer. The Buddha went so far as to say that the mere notion of I am is like a sickness or a dart lodged in the mind. By overcoming that conception, one becomes a peaceful sage, someone who lives without carrying that constant wound. Let's practice for a moment to experience it. And close your eyes and bring your attention to your body. Notice any physical sensation. It could be warmth, pressure, or tingling. And now, label it objectively. There is heat, there is pressure. Then gently add the phrase, this isn't mine, this isn't me, this doesn't define me. And do the same with any emotion that's present. There is ambience, there is calm. Acknowledge it without rejecting it or identifying with it. And again repeat, this isn't mine, this isn't me, this doesn't define me. Finally, notice a thought that comes up and treat it the same way. Open your eyes. Notice the difference. For a few seconds, you stop fighting your body or your mind. you saw phenomena for what they are, changing processes, not identities. This small gesture is the beginning of great freedom. As we cultivate this way of seeing, life feels lighter. When physical pain shows up, we no longer turn it into a personal drama. When mental criticism arises, we no longer make it a final judgment. And when a strong emotion shakes us, we know it doesn't have to define us. Letting go of what we're not doesn't make us insensitive. On the contrary, it makes us freer to respond wisely and compassionately. Instead of arguing with every sensation, thought, or emotion, we learn to let them appear and disappear without carrying them around as if they were me. The result is a more spacious mind, less caught up in labels, and a more open heart. When we stop arguing with the idea of a fixed self, we also stop demanding that life fit into that idea. And then we begin to live with greater calm, flexibility, and serenity. 3. Equanimity. Imagine you get a big compliment at work or at home. You feel happy, motivated, energized. Now, imagine that the very next day someone criticizes you or something doesn't turn out the way you expected. Suddenly, your motivation crashes and frustration sets in. That's how most of us live, bouncing from euphoria to discouragement, like a ball at the mercy of chance. The Buddha described a wise person as someone who isn't swept away by what's pleasant or by what's painful. When happiness comes, they don't swell with pride. When suffering comes, they don't sink into despair. They live in balance, like a sturdy tree that doesn't break in a gentle breeze or in a storm. This doesn't mean you don't feel. Equanimity isn't coldness or indifference. It's feeling without losing your center, knowing that both joy and sadness are visitors that come and go. By not fighting them, your heart stays clear and serene. Think about it in everyday life. Someone compliments you and your ego soars, but then criticism shows up and everything comes crashing down. Equanimity lets you appreciate the compliment without feeling superior and hear the criticism without feeling crushed. Neither euphoria nor dejection, just balance. To experience it, I suggest a short practice. And right now, remember something recent that made you really happy. Relive that moment and notice what sensations it brings up in your body. As you do so, gently repeat, "This too shall pass." Take a deep breath and let it out. Now, bring to mind a moment of frustration or sadness. Notice what comes up and repeat, "This too shall pass." Breathe and let it go again.
Open your eyes. What you've done is remind yourself that no emotion lasts forever. And seeing that, your mind relaxes. There's no longer any need to struggle to hold on to what's pleasant or to escape what's unpleasant. Both are part of the same river of life.
The wise person who doesn't argue with life isn't the one who avoids feeling, but the one who knows how to stay calm both on the mountaintop and in the valley. By cultivating this equanimity, every situation stops being a battlefield and becomes an opportunity to live with serenity. 4. The second arrow. Pain is inevitable. A failure, an illness, an accident, or a hurtful word. That's the first arrow, the blow that lands without our asking for it. But what hurts us most isn't that arrow. It's the second, the mental suffering we ourselves add afterward. Imagine you pitch an idea at work and it gets turned down. The first arrow is the event itself. Your proposal didn't move forward. The second arrow shows up when your mind starts saying, "I'm not cut out for this. They never appreciate me. I'm sure they're going to fire me." What was a simple setback turns into a personal drama that only amplifies the frustration. The Buddha compared it to someone struck by two arrows. An ordinary person is hit by both, the arrow of reality and the one shot by their own mind. A wise person, by contrast, feels the first arrow, but doesn't add the second. They experience what happened as it is, without getting caught up in stories that make it worse. This doesn't mean denying what's happening or pretending it doesn't hurt. It means acknowledging the pain without embellishing it with judgments and assumptions. The first arrow is enough. The second is one we create ourselves, and we can let it go. Let's do a short practice. Close your eyes and recall a recent situation that bothered you. Ask yourself, what was the first arrow? Describe what happened objectively. They rejected my idea. The appointment was delayed. The car wouldn't start. Now notice the second arrow, the thoughts you added after the fact. I'm worthless. This always happens to me. I'm sure everything's going to go wrong. See them as interpretations, not as reality. She then take a deep breath and silently repeat, I let go of the second arrow. With each exhale, imagine the arrow falling and disappearing. Open your eyes. The situation may still be annoying, but the burden is lighter. What remains is just the fact itself, much more manageable than the mental storm you used to add to it. This teaching doesn't eliminate life's difficulties, but it does keep us from compounding them. We can't always avoid the first arrow. The second is always up to us. With practice, you start to notice those extra arrows before they really stick. Instead of feeding the repetitive thoughts, you pause, breathe, and choose to let go. That's how you discover that living with just one arrow means living much more lightly. A wise person doesn't argue with life because they understand this difference. Pain comes, but it doesn't become a life sentence. That simple act of accepting the inevitable and letting go of what's added on completely changes the way you go through every experience. To recap, today we covered 4 ways to stop fighting with life and learn to live more calmly. The first was to remember the inevitable. We all age, get sick, die, are separated from what we love, and reap the consequences of our actions. By accepting these truths, we stop being surprised or rebelling against what is natural. The second was letting go of the idea that we own what we feel or think. Body and mind are processes, not something we own. By repeating, this isn't mine, this isn't me, this doesn't define me, we discover that we don't need to struggle with every emotion or thought because they aren't our identity. The third key was to cultivate equanimity. Neither the euphoria of the pleasant nor the dejection of the unpleasant sweeps the wise person away. With each breath, we remember, this too shall pass. That simple phrase brings us back to balance amid the ups and downs. And the fourth was to distinguish between the first and the second arrow. Pain comes, but the added suffering is optional. When we let go of the second arrow, life hurts less and feels lighter. 4 teachings, 4 gestures that remind us that true peace begins when we stop arguing with life. To make sure it doesn't just stay theoretical, I'd like to propose a simple challenge we'll call it the 4 keys. Each day, you'll spend just 2 minutes on one of the keys we covered today. One day, reflect on the inevitable. Silently repeat one of the 5 truths and notice what changes in you. Another day, practice non-attachment by saying, this isn't mine, this doesn't define me, when a strong emotion or thought arises. The next day, practice equanimity. Whether something makes you happy or makes you uncomfortable, calmly say, this too shall pass. And on another day, work with the second arrow. Distinguish between the fact and the story your mind adds, and let go of the rest. You don't need strict routines or set schedules. Just pick one of these keys and try it whenever you need it most. They're small, simple gestures, but each one opens a different door to serenity. If you repeat this little challenge over the course of the week, you'll realize that arguing with life isn't required. There's always another way to relate to what happens, lighter, wiser, and much freer. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for making it this far. I hope these 4 keys help you live with a little more calm and clarity, even in the midst of difficulties. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which part of life do you feel you struggle with the most? And what lesson from today would you like to start putting into practice? Your experience could inspire others who are going through the same thing. If you know someone who could benefit from this video, share it. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so we can keep walking this path of serenity together.